Welcome to LiCAS.news. I'm Shirley Benedictos, and these are headlines this week. Global Catholic groups call for end to disinformation campaign in Myanmar. Pope Francis renews appeal for end to violence in Myanmar. Pakistani Catholic families face eviction from their homes. Philippines to limit church attendance as country posts record daily COVID-19 cases. Rights group warns against Sri Lanka's anti-terror law. Vatican decrees Catholic Church cannot bless same-sex unions. And now to our stories. Influential Catholic groups from around the world joined calls for an end to military rule in Myanmar as they urged the global community to take strong diplomatic actions to restore democracy in the country. In a joint statement, Signis, Pax Christi International, and the Focolare movement called for an end to what they described as the disinformation campaign by the military to ensure and justify their stay in power. They also called for the protection of journalists who are arrested and harassed for sharing news and information on what is happening on the ground with the rest of the world. The military took power in Myanmar on February 1 following allegations of electoral fraud during the November polls. The Catholic groups condemned the coup even as they expressed support for calls made by church leaders, including Pope Francis and Cardinal Charles Mongbo of Yangon, for a meaningful dialogue. Signis is an organization of global Catholic communicators with thousands of affiliates in many countries. Pope Francis once again appealed for an end to bloodshed in Myanmar, saying, "Even I kneel on the streets of Myanmar and say, stop the violence." The pontiff made the call on Wednesday, March 17, during his weekly general audience, which was held inside the Vatican library due to health restrictions because of the pandemic. "Once again, and with great sorrow, I feel it is urgent to mention the dramatic situation in Myanmar, where many people, especially the young, are losing their lives to offer hope to their country," said Pope Francis. "I too kneel in the streets of Myanmar and say, end the violence. I too reach out my arms and say, may dialogue prevail," he added. A video and photographs of a Catholic nun pleading with security forces on her knees not to shoot protesters last week in the Myanmar city of Myitkyina have become viral on social media. Hundreds of Pakistani Christians are facing eviction from their homes after the country's Supreme Court ruled that the houses are on state-owned lands. The houses of at least 450 Catholic families were reportedly destroyed in the past week, while about 8,000 more are scheduled to be bulldozed in the coming days. Australian priest Robert McCulloch, Procurator General of the Missionary Society of St. Columban, described this situation as a civic crisis side by side a human tragedy. The priest said there has been a perennial encroachment problem in Pakistan with people occupying government-owned land. He said that when people first began to arrive, Christians, predominantly Catholics, began settling in fringes around the city and settled in temporary shacks that eventually became permanent homes. The Philippines is reimposing stricter limitations on church attendance and certain economic activities for over 2 weeks or until April 4, as the country recorded 7,103 new coronavirus cases on Friday. The Department of Health said there were now 648,066 confirmed coronavirus cases and 12,900 deaths, including 13 more fatalities on Friday. A wider lockdown in the Philippines, especially in the capital Manila, ahead of the annual observance of the Holy Week cannot be ruled out if its surge in COVID-19 infections continues, the country's Department of Health said. Some churches are planning to decrease the number of people who will be allowed to attend religious services. Several parish churches in the capital were reportedly to have been placed under lockdown this week after some of its personnel and priests tested positive of the coronavirus disease. A Sri Lankan government order that allows 2 years of detention without trial for causing religious, racial, or communal disharmony will be used against the country's minorities, a rights group has claimed. Human Rights Watch said the order, which was issued on March 9, expands the Draconian and Abusive Prevention of Terrorism Act. The rights group said that the regulation will allow the government of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to more easily target religious and racial minorities in violation of their basic rights. Human Rights Watch said the regulation broadly allows the authorities to detain and rehabilitate anyone who, by words, either spoken or intended to be read, causes the commission of violence or religious, racial, or communal disharmony. Instead of being tried, the suspect faces detention in a reintegration center for up to 1 year. The Vatican has said that priests cannot bless same-sex unions and that such blessings are not valid, in a ruling that greatly disappointed gay Catholics who had hoped their church was becoming more welcoming under Pope Francis. In some countries, such as the United States and Germany, parishes and ministers have begun blessing same-sex unions in lieu of marriage, and there have been calls for bishops to de facto institutionalize these. But conservatives in the 1.3 billion member church have expressed alarm over these practices, particularly those in Germany, where at least 2 bishops, including Cardinal Reinhard Marx of Munich, one of the Pope's top advisors, have shown support for some kind of pastoral blessing. In response to formal questions from a number of dioceses on whether the practice was allowed, the Vatican's doctrinal office, the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, issued the ruling negative. Pope Francis approved the response, the CDF said, adding that it was not intended to be a form of unjust discrimination, but rather a reminder of the truth of the liturgical rite of the sacrament of marriage and the blessing associated with it. Francis de Bernardo, executive director of the gay Catholics group New Ways Ministry, said, "It is not surprising, but still disappointing, that the Vatican has responded no." And that's all for this week. I'm Shirley Benedictos for LiCAS.news, your independent Catholic news source in Asia. For more stories, visit our website or subscribe to our YouTube channel.